right now, a lot of our members from around the world are doing something differently. They're actually just like me here in my kitchen working from home. If you think about the root word of attraction, it's attract. These wonderful places, zoos, aquariums, museums, theme parks, they attract us to work. But unfortunately, right now, in the wake of COVID-19, we can't come together because we're social distancing ourselves, making sure that we flatten the curve. And that's what we're doing here at IAAPA. IAAPA is still open for business. All my colleagues at Team IAAPA from around the world continue to work from home to serve you. And that's what we're going to do a little bit today. We're going to talk to some experts who actually work from home all the time in the global attractions industry. So joining us first here, say good morning to Matt Heller. Matt, there we go. Matt, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful, Scott. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you very much. And if Matt looks familiar, along with this guy, Josh Lieberman. Josh, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Scott. Doing great. How are you?
Both of these gentlemen are the hosts of the Attractions Pros podcast. We are delighted to welcome you to IAAPA Chat Live this morning to talk a little bit about what you do pretty much every day when you're not traveling, and that is working from home. So both of you, thank you very much. I know you've come up with a couple tips. First of all, this is week 3 for those of us here at Team IAAPA. What is it like, we'll start with you, Matt, to work from home pretty much all the time?
Well, it's pretty interesting because there's a lot of work that you're actually doing, but you're doing it in a place that's also very familiar.
Sure.
So when you think about, interacting with your coworkers and going to get coffee and things like that, that just doesn't happen at home. So you have to kind of replicate that by getting on the phone or texting someone or, continuing the social aspect of being at home. But, there's also a lot of distractions. There's laundry and taking the dog out and, doing the dishes, and all those things can kind of get in the way. But, if you set aside some time and you're diligent about it, then you can get your work done too.
Josh, how about you? You're home all the time as well, except when you're traveling for business. Tell me a little bit about what is it like to kind of just be in place.
Well, there's definitely some upsides to it, like not having a commute, kind of being able to get to and from work very easily because you're kind of always there. But definitely requires a lot of discipline as far as managing your schedule, managing your time, not getting too off track or too distracted. And also, there definitely is that kind of obvious isolation and loneliness that we're all feeling right now of just, hey, it would be great if I could just chat with my coworkers, or if I could just meet up with my coworkers after work, or, we had a great productive meeting today in our boardroom. You don't get any of that. So you kind of have to find alternate solutions to be able to have that same level of both work-related productivity and also kind of that social engagement with your coworkers and peers as well.
So one thing that folks might not know, both of you not only work at home, you have spouses that also work at home. So not only do you have your home office, you also have the love of your life right there with you. How does that work from a social perspective, that you're in the same place with your wives all day long? And then again, all night long after, let's say, working hours are over.
Well,
Matt, we'll start with you.
Sure, Scott. Thank you. I think for my wife and I, one of the really important things that we did was designate workspace for both of us. So we actually moved up to North Carolina about 5 years ago, and one of the things that we definitely had to have in this house was a spot that we could both have sort of a private area that we could both work, and then at the end of the day, close the door and be able to say, okay, our work hours are over. Of course, the big challenge with that is, if she's got something she's working on, or I've got something I'm working on that's taking a little longer, then the other one now gets a little bit of extra work time too. And, there's times when we'll take our laptops and we'll be sitting on the couch, and we'll both be working. And it's sometimes just nice to be in the same space. But, for the most part, there's things that she needs to do differently and I need to do differently. So we did set aside those specific spaces. We're still working on kind of the key hours. That's one of the things that people talk about is, setting aside the right amount of time to do your work. But sometimes those lines blur when your spouse is working at home as well.
Josh, I feel somewhat like we're on the Brady Bunch here. Josh, how about you? Tell me, what is it like having your spouse working at home with you inside the same space?
Sure. So definitely a lot of similarities that Matt mentioned there, but I would say the biggest difference is that we live in Chicago and we're in the city. So we're in a 3-bedroom condo where actually our master bedroom is under renovation. So it's not even usable, which just really minimizes the amount of actual designated space that we have. So basically our entire living space blurs between living space and workspace. And what is kind of funny is that just prior to all of this, prior to everyone now kind of moving to working from home, we used to tell people, yeah, we live together and we work from home, and people would just be absolutely shocked of like, well, how do you guys survive with each other? How do you guys not just rip each other's throats out day in, day out? And it definitely, it's what a lot of people are now experiencing of, oh, this is how you have to be able to manage this working from home with your spouse or with your family kind of at the same time. So we definitely try to designate our specific workspace as well, but there's a lot of times where we both just might be at the kitchen table or on the couch, perhaps after working hours where the TV is on, and maybe I don't even know if either of us know what's on TV. It's just kind of background noise while we're both working later, which are all kind of against some of the guidelines that we're going to talk about today. But it kind of really ties into saying it requires a lot of that discipline and at least that awareness of, am I in the most productive environment right now, or could this be more productive for my work tasks? And is it unified? Is it both for me, my spouse, my family, anyone else living under the same roof?
Now, Matt, I listened to the podcast, and you had a really interesting tip that you need to have space, designated space during these times where work is completed, that is where you go to get the job done. And that really resonated with me because so much of the time here in the kitchen, right, that I start my day right here in the kitchen, and then around 7, maybe 8 o'clock at night, I'm still in the kitchen working, and I'm thinking to myself, huh, it's probably time for dinner, but I've just gone the entire time. It's probably a good idea, as you said, to have that space and have a door to that space that when the day's done, you shut that space off, and then you pretty much kind of box it together. You put it in that compartment that work is now over and now I'm back home again. Explain that to me.
Sure. So I do think that in the ideal situation, people would have, if they have a home office, they would have a door and they would have a spot to do their work. I think what a lot of people are being thrust into is, like you're talking about, Scott, a kitchen table, right, or a card table in the corner of a bedroom someplace, right? And so I think wherever that is, and we're all anticipating, we're all hopeful that this is going to resolve and we're going to get back to work and we're going to get back to our attractions. But until then, even if it's a corner, of a card table in the corner of your bedroom, if that's your designated space, then kind of mentally prepare that that's where I'm going to get my work done. And then when you go out to the rest of the house, you can say, now I'm home. And then when you go back to that space, now I'm at work. It's as much of a mental game as it is a physical game.
Absolutely. Josh, how about you? Do you have a designated space at home where you traditionally get the job done and then you leave it behind?
It's a floating space. I will say that my wife and I are both continuously striving to have more and more of designated workspaces. But like you mentioned, you're at your kitchen table right now. We constantly, sometimes if you just need to change a scenery, it just means changing rooms, and now I'm somewhere else, and now, okay, I can reset, kind of be productive, versus kind of like what you said, you sit down, you start working, and then next thing you realize is that it's dinner time or it's past dinner time, and you've been in the same space the entire time. So I will say there probably is certainly an advantage of getting up and moving around. And also I would say too, that under normal circumstances, not related to everything going on right now, being able to get up and leave the house and go into Starbucks or go into like a cafe or something like that, I have found to be very beneficial as well. So when it does come time to kind of be able to get back out into public, and when restaurants and cafes start reopening again, I look forward to being able to kind of get some fresh air and be able to kind of get out of the house to a more remote workspace too.
And Matt, that's one of your tips, that it's okay to take a break and go outside, whether it's walk the dog. I understand you have a new puppy. It's all right to take the dog outside, go for a little bit of a walk. And in fact, my dog hears me say the word walk right now, and he's getting very excited here behind me. But that's all right. You have to kind of plan those breaks. Explain what that can do for you in the middle of a busy workday from home.
Absolutely. So I think one of the things we have to recognize is that when everybody got sent home to do their work at home, it wasn't just them who was getting sent home. It was also their spouse, if they have a spouse, their children, are no longer in school. So there's a lot of these things that are happening. So I think, kind of like Josh said, getting some stimulus outside of the screen that you're looking at, whether you're working on your phone or working on a computer, I think is really, really helpful, because it gets your head in a different place. Getting out, getting fresh air, getting some sunshine if it's sunny where you are, just being in a different space can allow you to think of things a little differently. I'll be honest, when we started talking about doing this live broadcast and you asked us for some bullet points, I thought of some of mine as I was raking leaves out in the yard. So you don't always have to have or have to be in that space to have all the best ideas. Sometimes they come when you're thinking of something else, or you're in a completely different mindset. So, while, Josh and I will say these are great guidelines, but you're going to break every one of them. Having a designated space is important. But like Josh said, we live in the mountains of North Carolina, and one of our outside porches, a screened-in porch, faces the mountains. And so,
nice.
More often than not, you will find me out there when the weather's nice with my laptop doing work, just because I can also get fresh air. I can have a different view, and that can put me in a different mindset. So I think those are important. I think, to your point, Scott, too, is that maybe if you are working on something really intense, you set a timer on your phone, right, that goes off after an hour. Sure. And boom, that's your reminder. Oh, that's my fresh air break, and I have to get up and I have to move and go do something else.
Very nice. And that goes along with one of the things that Josh said, which was you have to still schedule meal breaks. And I'm guilty of this. I will come out, I will sit at the kitchen table at 7:30 in the morning, start to check email from my colleagues around the world, whether they're over in Shanghai or Hong Kong and Belgium. And then it's about 10:45, and I realize I haven't had breakfast yet. Josh, tell me a little bit about the success you found when it comes to actually scheduling those meal breaks.
Sure. So if we're talking about breakfast, get it done before you open your laptop. Or if you have a morning routine. Yesterday, I woke up. I was very proud of myself. I woke up. I went for a 3.5 mile run.
Oh, did we lose Josh's audio?
Oh, uh-oh.
I can still hear him.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are. All right, continue.
All right,
keep going. Thank you.
All right. I was going to say, yesterday I was very proud of.
Oh, I think Josh is frozen again, possibly.
Can you hear me? Am I here? Can you hear my audio?
There he is. Josh, continue.
All right. So if you don't start your morning routine right away,
yes.
You might not get to it until it's no longer morning again. So if you try to, if we're talking about meals is one thing, if exercise is another thing, then make sure you do that before you even check your email. Otherwise, you just end up in the rabbit hole. And then the same thing goes with kind of taking that midday break. Well, it's funny, actually, last week, you were doing a live chat on Twitter, and one of the questions came up about working from home, and someone said something to the effect, or I think you even said, kind of that same issue of you prop up your laptop at 7:30 and next thing you realize you'd miss lunch. I read that, and I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was sitting there at my kitchen table in my pajamas, realizing I hadn't even made coffee yet. I was like, wow, I just kind of sat down and just went straight into the work rabbit hole without kind of taking that me time of saying, all right, I need to make breakfast, I need to kind of just put some clothes on and be able to kind of get into work mode versus just kind of starting and getting off and then feeling like I'm being productive, whereas I'm actually just being busy.
And Josh, that's one of your tips that you said, that you still have to get dressed every morning.
Yeah.
Don't pull out of bed and stay in your pajamas, but get dressed.
Right, right. If you will find that if you stay in sweats or you stay in your pajamas all day or you try to work from bed or work from the couch,
Hmm.
trust me, I can tell you, you're just not gonna feel as great at the end of the day versus if you get into the mindset of saying, okay, I'm getting up and I'm going to work. It doesn't have to be super fancy. I'm wearing this dress shirt because we're doing this Facebook Live right now. I'm wearing shorts underneath this though, so it doesn't need to be a fancy get up and go to work type of attire, but at least something that just kind of allows you to feel a little bit more put together.
Sounds good. And that hits upon one of the things that Matt said when it comes to working from home as well. You have to not only, of course, take the breaks, but find that prime time. Matt, what does prime time mean?
I'm glad you asked about that, Scott, because prime time is something sort of your natural body clock will tell you, right? So if you think about your day, typically, if you are most creative and most productive in the morning, then that's probably what you would call your prime time. And maybe you feel most energized right after lunch, or maybe at 10 o'clock at night is when you're getting your real strong wind. And sometimes our work schedules may not line up with our prime time, right? Meetings we're in, or things like that. But when you're working from home, you can kind of design your day around that prime time. And for me, I'm a morning person. I know that I can get up, and almost opposite of what Josh says, I will get up and work for a little while and then make breakfast. But I've done this for a long time. I've kind of fallen into that routine, and I find that it works for me. And I think that's another kind of overall message here, is find those things that work for you. So your prime time is really kind of when you're at your most productive, your most creative. And I know that a lot of people also have, other people that are around, again, a spouse, and your kids are at home. So if you can sort of plan your day when you get to work, right? And you get to work your prime time, and then maybe there's a couple hours for the kids to do schooling, and then maybe your spouse's prime time is afternoon and they get to work in the afternoon while you're watching the kids, or whatever that looks like. You can get a lot more done in that prime time, just because your mind is ready, your body's ready, and you're naturally ready to do that work.
Fantastic. Now, we do have a couple questions from those who are watching around the world. We've had people this morning chime in and say good morning from San Diego, good morning from Singapore. This question comes from Clint Novak in Virginia. Clint would like to know, I know you guys travel a lot for work. How do you get daily work done when you're on the road? Josh, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, it definitely, I would say, has a lot to do with really managing your calendar, and really knowing what needs to be done on a daily basis and what are maybe more long-term projects or other types of work that you have that can be managed differently. So for instance, if I know that I'm traveling, next Wednesday and Thursday, which I'm not, obviously, but let's say under a normal circumstance, maybe I would be, I'm not going to schedule any calls or meetings that day, even if I anticipate that I might have some downtime, or I might get to the airport early, or I might be in my hotel. Unless it's critical to have during that time, I'll probably schedule a call either before I go or maybe even after I come back. If I'm going to do a workshop, I want to be fully kind of in that headspace to do that, and then be able to kind of check in and check my email during those downtimes. And I would consider any actual productivity that I had to be considered kind of a bonus. If I hadn't anticipated any calls or any deadlines or anything like that, aside from the project that I'm working on and the location that I'm at, then I'll check in and I'll be responsive, and I'll do that kind of during I would say the nooks and crannies during the day, whether I'm at the airport or at a hotel, or if I'm visiting a client and have a chance to just be able to kind of sneak away and just do some admin work. It's kind of about finding those small moments throughout the day to be able to do a little bit at a time, while also knowing ahead of time that, okay, I'm not going to be available. I'm going to have my out of office on. I'm not going to, I'll take calls if I get an urgent one, but I'm kind of scheduling the time to be there, for the client if I'm visiting a client, or for a trade show if I'm at a trade show or a conference.
John has a question, and Matt, this goes out to you. John asks, many have demands inside the home, such as parents who have now found themselves homeschool teachers. How do you balance work and at the same time try to educate your children who aren't in school, just like you're not at work?
Right. That's an amazingly a great question, because I think all goes back to involving the whole family in your plan. So, for example, if you have children that you have to homeschool, and kind of like I was talking about before, if your prime time is morning and you can spend a little bit of time at work there, and then maybe you have breakfast as a family, and then you do your homeschooling for a couple of hours, and then your spouse gets to spend some prime time working on work stuff in the afternoon. Just really involve the whole family so that they know what to expect throughout the day. So there's a specific time, like we talked about time and place for work. There's a specific time for one parent to be working. There's a specific time for schooling. There's a specific time for playtime. There's a specific time for the other parent to be working, and you just get everybody involved. You get everybody on a schedule. You get everybody in a routine. And we all know with children and pets, we have to be consistent. So just be consistent with that. Get up, make your breakfast. Do the things that we've talked about as guidelines. But just have a plan that does involve the entire family.
Very, very smart. And Matt, you also said, keep in mind while you're working from home, you're in charge. You yourself are in charge of your own time, and it's up to you to manage it correctly. Explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so often when we work for an organization and we go to work, we have a commute and we go to someplace else, there's this line of work-life balance, and a lot of times we think we're at work, we're working, and we're at home, we've got the home. And, so often those lines blur, and now those lines are obliterated, right? So it's even more important to be strategic about that time. You asked us first about, Josh and I both have wives that work at home with us. And, my wife and I have had to schedule like date time, or this is time we're not going to work. So part of it is about being strategic and just understanding that, things are going to get in the way, life's going to happen. But the more that you can be strategic about that, the better off you're going to be.
And Josh, you have a strategy when it comes to those conference calls and how you don't allow them to get out of hand. Explain that.
Sure. So there's kind of that popular meme over the last probably several months, or maybe the last couple of years or so, of someone saying, I just survived another meeting that could have been an email. The same applies here with conference calls. If you do have designated tasks in productivity, treat those conference calls as if they are in-person meetings. And if they aren't needed, don't have the conference call. If you can communicate via email, it's amazing that we have this technology and being able to do kind of this type of face-to-face interaction, and there's Zoom and there's Skype and there's FaceTime and there's so many different platforms to make telecommuting easier. Don't let it be technology for technology's sake. Make it actually very useful and productive. And if you don't need to have that Zoom meeting, if that can just be a chain of emails and actually get done quicker and get to what needs to be done quicker, go the most efficient route with the tools that we have. Don't use technology for technology's sake.
Now, also, Josh, you talked about being able to, let's say, multitask inside the house. And we've talked a little bit about distractions. One of the benefits from working from home is you can do a load of laundry. Tell me about how do you set those boundaries so those distractions don't overtake your day?
Sure. So when I was putting this together, instead of saying don't multitask, it's really more so about know your own multitasking abilities. So for me, I know that if, let's say, I am working at the kitchen table, I can be listening for the washing machine, and I can go switch out a load of laundry, and that could be a 2-minute interruption. What I can't do is prop up my laptop on the couch and think that I can watch all 7 episodes of Tiger King and be just as focused as work and be able to kind of enjoy the show at the same time. I need to personally separate those. So I know that, say, okay, I want to get this done. I want to watch this show on Netflix because that's what everyone's talking about right now is, oh, I can catch up on all these TV series. Don't think that you can do that and be productive at the same time if you couldn't normally do that anyway.
All right, so I'm also getting questions here on my phone as well. Not only are they coming in on the live stream, and if you have a question, you can definitely ask it. Just type it in, and we'll give it to our panel of experts. When it comes to Matt, this one's directed to you. Tell me about what is the best way to check in on employees. Let's say you are the manager of an FEC, or maybe you are the general manager of a theme park, an amusement park, or at a museum. What's the best way to keep tabs on your employees, not to be the person who's kind of hovering, but instead just to say, hey, look, how are you? How are things going?
Yeah, I think that's a very individual thing with your employees. Like every team member that you have is an individual. So for some that might be a phone call once a week. For some that might be texting them. For some that might be an email check-in. That might even be, if you haven't started that process yet, a quick phone call and saying, hey, I want to keep tabs on you, but I don't want to micromanage. I don't want to, get in your business, but I do want to make sure that we're continuing to communicate. And if you have questions, you can ask them. And, if I have, things that I want to communicate to you, what's the best way that we can do that? So even if you are, you have a lot of employees that you are overseeing, it's still a good idea to try to figure out what that schedule looks like. And, quite frankly, I think you'll get as much out of it if you're the manager and you're checking in on your employees. Not just a, hey, how are you? Click. Hey, how are you? Click. You've got some real connection that you want to make there. You'll find out what's going on in their lives, and they will be as inspiring to you as you might be to them. So I think it's really a two-way street, and it really helps you stay connected. And look, we're all human beings, right? We're all feeling the same feelings of isolation. So if you can reach out to someone and get a quick connection, that can give you the energy that you need to continue on your day.
Absolutely. I have a comment here on my phone from, there it is, have a wave swinger on the front of it. IAAPA North American Vice President John Hollenbeck gives us a shout out because, and we did not plan this, we are all wearing blue checkered shirts. That just happened, honestly, by chance. And also, Mike also says, hey, did you plan this? No, we really didn't. In fact, I was a little bit more casual today. I sat down at the computer, saw both of these gentlemen, and thought, oh, I'm going to have to match it here. I need a button-down shirt, just not a polo. So we also have a lot of great technology we're using. We don't have a control room anymore. It's just, honestly, me in front of my laptop here in the kitchen. And I'm going to see if this will actually work. Using the new technology, can we put a comment up on the screen? Let's see what this looks like. There we go. Karen Staley says, this is so good. I'm multitasking by listening. Thank you, IAAPA. Karen, thank you very much for watching, and thank you for your kind comment as well. And I'm glad that the technology works like that. Look at that. Pretty impressive, right? Good stuff.
Very cool.
Very, very cool. So in our final moments here together, tell me, fill us with a little bit of hope. If we look at where we are right now, these are unprecedented times. I started the broadcast by saying that, attractions attract. That's how they get their name. These are places people go and visit. And by how we're all working from home right now, we're not doing that. Matt, what are people telling you about how they're looking forward to essentially, home's great, but I'm ready to get back to work?
Absolutely. A lot of people are using that phrase, the new normal. Yet we have no idea what the new normal is going to look like, but they're all kind of looking forward to it. And I think there's so many great people in this industry who are very hopeful that when we get out of this, we'll be better than what we were when it started. And the thing that I'm continuing to hear and quite frankly be inspired by is the lengths that people are going to connect via technology, right? And so whether it's a Zoom meeting or again, a text or email, people are reaching out because they want to connect. They want to get some human interaction. And I think if nothing else for our industry, that's a beacon of hope, because when we get out of this, people are going to want to do that. They're going to want to be attracted to our attractions again. They're going to want to gather. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but we do know that people are going to want to do that. It's a human need that we all have. So that's something that keeps me going, and I hope it keeps everybody else going.
Josh, how about you? What are you hearing from your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, for one thing, that a lot of people are really using this time to try to be as productive as possible and kind of seeing the silver lining and saying, hey, I am home all the time. I do have more time than I otherwise would. Using this time to learn a new skill, to watch more webinars, to listen to more podcasts, to read more books, to be able to, like Matt said, come out of this better than we were previously. We don't know when the exact end date is going to be. So being able to just use that time to try to be very productive. Another thing too, we've been talking to a lot of people in the industry, and a common thread that that we've been hearing a lot is this optimistic, pent up demand that everyone feels like our guests are going to have. And it's not just about us going back to work. That's part of it. It's also kind of this anticipation that people are going to need our industry more than anything else when we get to the other side of this, because we provide the exact opposite of social distancing. And when it comes time to be able to bring people together again, that it's really going to be our time to shine, and that's going to be our moment.
It looks like folks agree with you. Check it out here. John said, well said, Josh. And our final question is from George today. We'll wrap it up on this. George wants to know, do the guys have any thoughts on a good podcast to listen to during the workday? Anybody? Any ideas?
Well, there's one that comes to mind that I know George is very familiar with, called the Attraction Pros podcast, where you can hear Josh and I talk about all kinds of different things, attractions related. That's one that comes to my mind.
You can also hear George, I think, what was his episode? It was probably about 6 months or so ago. Yeah, Attraction.
A little shameless plug there at the very end. Matt Heller, Josh Lieberman, thank you both very, very much. As you've seen at the bottom of our screen, during our time together, for the latest updates, you can visit IAAPA.org. We have member resources right there at the IAAPA website, IAAPA.org/COVID-19. We will get through this together. We are one great attractions family, and IAAPA is proud to be able to keep everybody together throughout the duration of this event, knowing that on the other side, we will all be stronger together because of the connections that we have made. I am IAAPA Managing Editor Scott Feiss. That is the latest here from Orlando. Thank you all for joining us today. And if you joined us midway through the stream, you can find an archive version back on our website, as well as at our Facebook page, IAAPA HQ. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much for joining us, and take care, everybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Take care.